All right, everybody, welcome to the first episode of Questionable Treatments, which is my wife,
Kimberly.
Yep, it's her podcast idea because she is a medical professional. I'm Ryan, by the way, and my life is learning a lot of things about the medical industry and murder and all the things that she listens to and reads that I don't want to. So her idea was to have me read her horrific notes so that she can enjoy my discomfort. So that's what we're going to do. On this podcast, we're going to be investigating the crimes of people who are trained to be helpful, kind, and treat everyone respectfully no matter what. Talking about the people we trust most, the secrets we would only disclose to get treatment. These are people we should be able to trust with our lives. Doctors, nurses, and medical personnel. There are times in our past and places in our present where there have been quite a few bad apples, and we are trying to uncover what happened and what the motives for those crimes were. We'll not only be talking about murder, great, but also inhumane treatment, extortion, and the misuse of power. Also great. Bedtime stories.
That's what I fall asleep to.
On season 1, we will be talking about the darkest part of our most recent medical history. It was a time that should not have happened, but was allowed to occur because it was overseen by a government that did not care who was mistreated as long as there was no news on the matter. So we're talking about insane asylums. Great. Thank you.
You're welcome. I figured you'd really want to know.
For the first episode, I want to take a deeper dive into the treatments, how they came to be, and how it was all resolved so we can get a better understanding of the matter. We will be diving into the history of the people and treatments that shaped the period of time where insane asylums were common, and trying to understand what happened when we really don't have a ton of information readily available.
The main reason I wanted to do something like this is I would see news articles or hear podcasts or see it in like media, like movies and stuff. And you take that as truth.
Yeah.
But it's not.
Well, or not the whole picture.
Or not the whole picture. It's not true. Or they go into it, but it's a very small amount of information. Like a lot of the information that I have discovered just with this first episode was news to me. Like, I didn't even know any of this.
The little bit that I read of your notes so far was pretty new to me.
Yeah. So I figured any crazy person just like myself, which would be anyone listening to this, would want to know more.
Yeah. Kim likes to listen to the things that would kill an Amish child if they just heard it. That's how she goes to sleep. And apparently that's how, like, everybody's wife and girlfriend that I know
only the trustworthy ones.
As well. Yeah. Like, a lot of the people I know relax in the bathtub with like snacks and wine and listening to horrific stuff. Let's see. Yeah, like you were saying, we see information about asylums and we hear allegations of the crimes committed there or the atrocities, or you see ghost shows on Travel Channel where they talk about how many hundreds of thousands of people died and they assume kind of everybody was mistreated in these places. They're just like lousy with ghosts.
More so Discovery at this point because Zach Bagans took over Travel Channel and has not allowed any ghost shows to be on there.
You're right. Discovery's starting to go ghost hunter too.
Yeah.
Anyway, so to start us off, we're going to look into the idea of asylums and how that came to be. Back in medieval times, there were places for the poor and the sick to sleep, recuperate, and eat. They were called almshouses. They were also referred to as hospitals, which is the origin of the term hospital that we use today, although obviously applied a little bit differently. There is actually an almshouse still in operation in, I'm going to say Worcester, England, although I don't know that I've heard that pronounced out loud, which was built in 990. So
quite old.
Yeah. Like the oldest building in this town is like 1812.
But that's when this town was founded,
right,
though.
Yeah. It was a trading post. The state didn't exist when that cabin was built.
No, I mean, that's the difference between Europe and, the rest of the world and the United States.
Yeah.
The United States just tears down old buildings and rebuilds, whereas the rest of the world is like, oh, cool, old building. Let's just repurpose it.
Yeah, it's hard to say which approach is right. I've seen arguments online, like this is definitely a tangent, but I've seen arguments online that like, yeah, American homes are built of wood and drywall and whatever, but they're also super easy to fix. And, it's a lot easier than trying to replace like 1,000-year-old stonework or something.
Yeah, but think of how cool it would be.
Oh, it'd be super cool.
My house is this very old
right
almshouse.
Right. Like our great-great-great-great-grandkids live in the same house.
Yeah.
This is like the house of Theseus. If this stayed in the family and everything eventually got replaced, is it really still the same house? Okay, so hospitals, right. This one was built in 990, this almshouse, but it now operates as basically a retirement home. And the idea of the almshouse kind of seemed to inspire a couple of things. If I'm reading your notes right, they inspired the sort of the hospital we have now, the workhouses and poorhouses that came later, the asylums, and the nursing homes.
Yep.
Because they were sort of a catch-all for people who couldn't really care for themselves.
Yep. For the sick, the poor, and the elderly.
Okay. So there were about 800 almshouses by the 1500s, and we're talking about England or the UK as a whole, even though it didn't exist
UK,
at that
Europe
time.
kind of area.
Okay. Yeah, we can assume probably Wales and England.
Wales and England came up a lot in my research.
All right. So following Henry VIII's dissolution of the monasteries and the abolition of Chantry's Act, the charity almshouses were dismantled, the land was sold, and the buildings were torn down. It wasn't until Victorian times that the need for these houses was strong enough to come back. People migrating to different towns needed a place to stay and work, so the almshouses were rebuilt.
It's interesting how an issue that happened then is an issue that we're having again now.
Mm-hmm.
And not even just in the United States, all over the world. It's the same issue.
It does seem to be all over the world. So the almshouses came back and were supposed to be a better way for the workers to live, because they were just not having a good quality of life in the existing places. Yeah.
Like workhouses is really what they were called.
Yeah. Sort of like the only place they could
go.
The
Japanese hotels where you sleep in like a little cubicle?
Yeah, the capsule hotels.
Basically like that, but like very dirty.
Okay. Yeah, it seems like this is also a thing that repeats their history. Like, hey, we built like projects or some kind of subsidized housing or some government run thing like that England did after the war, and eventually they become run down and crappy and they're like, we need something else, and they just kind of repeat the cycle and do it again. Mm-hmm. But almshouses in America, well, in England, they were intended to be these picturesque rows of cottages with a courtyard to provide a place to relax. That's what your notes say.
Yep.
Sounds lovely. Almshouses in America were in stark contrast to these English ones. And we will see kind of a trend of this throughout the episode. There were poor laws put in place, but it was hard to get eligibility for them. If you were widowed or elderly and well known in town, you would receive a little help. If you were a young, fit-looking man or a woman who had a child outside of marriage...
sex.
You did not get any help and were placed into American almshouses, also called poorhouses, because you were deemed the undeserving poor.
The actual term for that is unfit.
Okay. Undeserving Poor sounds like a good band name, though.
For who?
Probably a cover band. Having to move into these houses was called indoor relief, but if you got to stay at your own house with help, that would be called outdoor relief. To receive help, you had to be a working citizen of the state and have paid taxes for up to 7 years. So they make it so that you can't just move in. Yeah, you can't just be like, well, it's nice over there, I'll move over there, and then use their social services.
You can't jump from state to state and get help and stuff.
It makes sense, but it's also kind of rough. In the 1820s, Josiah Quincy and John Yates pushed for poorhouses to be built in every city, specifically to strike fear into the able-bodied working class.
Quincy was from Massachusetts and Yates was from New York.
Okay.
So 2 different states.
So the saying, you're going to drive us to the poorhouse, is basically something that came from this, according to your notes here. And there used to be a card in Monopoly that I don't remember that said, go to the poorhouse, lose a turn. So that was like a thing common enough that it was in the common vocabulary before there was the internet to spread that kind of thing around. So people knew that these existed, and apparently they did their job of scaring people and being a place that you did not want to end up.
Yeah, basically, poorhouses were prisons today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, your notes say Yates did an interview and stated the present poor laws tend to encourage the sturdy beggar and profligate vagrant to become pensioners upon the public funds. Profligate vagrant to become pensioners upon the public funds. It's an eloquent way of putting that. These provisions operate as so many invitations to become beggars. Outdoor relief had blunted his proper instincts, or in the words of various overseers of the poor, served to relax individual exertion by unnerving the arm of industry and weakening the desire of honest independence. So if you don't speak robber baron bullshit, that means having a safety net for people so they don't starve and freeze to death is going to make people lazy.
Yep.
Because everybody's going to want to live in all the poorhouses.
Yep.
And eat gruel every day instead of, well, maybe they would, rather than like risk their lives working in some steel mill or whatever for an asshole who takes 90% of the money.
If we believe
For none of,
media, that seems to be what's happening with the homeless population now, to get into prison so that way they have a place to sleep and they get food.
Yeah, I've seen YouTube like shorts where people are doing skits about it.
Yeah.
They're at a prison sentencing and they're like, you get 20 years. They're like, yes, I can't believe it. This is amazing. I got to go call my mom and tell her. Like, what do you? No, you're going to jail. It's like, yeah, I understand. I can't believe I get to go for this long. Mom, I'm gonna be fine. I don't have to worry about it.
No more taxes for me.
So, let's see. The state of the poorhouses mirrored what we would later see in asylums, with overcrowding, underfed inmates, unsanitary conditions, and forced unpaid labor in workhouses that came later. Usually the work was similar to what we think of in sweatshops today. There was a movement to get the children out of the poorhouses by paying tradesmen, tradies. People who did, electricians, plumbers,
welders.
Whatever. Yeah. To teach the children their skills so that they would be able to find work. This is basically like an apprenticeship, but like a boarding school meets apprenticeship. Is that kind of?
Kind of, yeah. It was meant for like younger than 18.
Okay.
Yeah, Benjamin Franklin was a big pusher of this movement.
Yeah, that's odd. But he also had a thing for French streetwalkers.
What?
Ladies of the night.
Oh.
At least that's what they say.
Didn't grow up in that time. Don't know.
Yeah, I did. I'm super old.
You did turn 772 today.
Okay. Where did I leave off? Oh, yeah. So many of the people housed in these workhouses were sort of by default insane and indigent. Children were usually removed forcibly and moved far away from their parents so that these adults would not be able to complain about harsh working conditions and abuse that the children might be subjected to.
And in case you didn't know, because I didn't either, indigent means poor.
Okay. In the 1700s, these houses were moved to the outskirts of towns, with the wealthy actually visiting the houses to view the poor like they were zoo animals while dining or having tea. While some were repulsed, most thought it was a fine event to attend. These houses were also a way for the poor or working class to get free treatment from doctors who learned and honed their medical skills on the inmates.
Yep.
So
inmates were what people who lived in these poor houses were called.
Yeah.
And it seems like it was a catch-all term for anybody who was like committed into something.
Yeah. Notice it's been sprinkled throughout this. This was the only good thing the houses provided while they were active. The doctors usually treated venereal diseases and provided care for unwed pregnant mothers.
Venereal diseases is STDs.
They also treated common diseases of the time, but with insufficient care due to the severe underfunding of these houses. In 1841, a group of activists fought for the insane and indigent to have better treatment, which is how dedicated asylums started to be built. I don't mean to laugh at this. It's just, I can't believe the words that I'm reading sometimes and the order they're coming out. One of the loudest voices was Dorothea Dix. Dorothea L. Dix was born in Hamden, Maine in 1802. She was unhappy at home, and it was suspected that she was neglected by her parents. In 1814, she moved in with her grandmother, who lived in Boston. She was only able to attend school occasionally while living with her parents, and it seems that she was not able to continue her education while living with her grandmother. Is that correct? Not able to?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. With limited job opportunities for women, Dorothea decided to become a school teacher. Odd for not having gone to school herself.
Well, it doesn't matter because you're just reading out of a book basically at that time.
If you just can teach yourself.
Yeah, if you know how to read and write, there you go.
Yeah. Yeah, that was in one of the Sherlock Holmes games we just played together.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rich Lady had a little school just like, hey, street urchins will teach you to read.
Yep.
So she worked out of her grandmother's home doing this teaching. And a few years into teaching, she wrote Conversations on Common Things or Guide to Knowledge, which became very popular among female teachers. Dorothea believed women should have the same education as men. She wrote other books, many with moral meanings, and served as a governess for the father of Unitarianism, William Channing, an opportunity made possible by her grandmother's wealth. So, who you know, who's in your class.
Yep, as we see
Anybody
today.
who says, that class isn't a thing in the U.S., totally wrong.
Yep.
I mean, just totally wrong.
Yep.
By 1831, Dorothea opened a secondary school, also in her grandmother's home, but she began suffering from bouts of illness, seemingly severe colds and depression. It is believed that Dorothea began her work on improving the conditions of inmates of all kinds, particularly the insane, because she suffered from depression, which could cause a mental breakdown. Because of her illness, Dorothea had to stop teaching, but this allowed her to become the voice of the mentally ill. In 1841, Dorothea volunteered to become a Sunday school teacher for female inmates. She found the mentally ill being terribly mistreated and vowed to improve their conditions.
This was in prisons. Like, she would go and teach female inmates in prisons.
Okay. Dorothea wrote Memorial, a pamphlet that exposed the horrors the inmates were subjected to. It detailed her critiques on how the mentally ill were being neglected and mistreated, highlighting abuses like caging, harmful restraints, and incarceration without clothing. That's of women inmates, female inmates? Or just everybody?
But the female section of prisons was also housed with men. So you have the men's wards, which is, all of the prison, and then you have one little section that's the female ward.
Right. And they would cage the women without clothes?
Yeah, they'd cage women, men,
It just
children.
seems odd in a time where, like, I don't know if it was in the U.S., but I know in England we saw stuff about, like, women not being allowed to smoke in public.
Yeah.
Because it was considered indecent. Like, there are all these decency laws, and they're like, we're just going to throw these women naked into this cell.
Well, probably what happened is because they've gone insane.
Yeah.
Or they were insane at that time.
They just have to maybe take everything away from them so they can't
harm themselves. Or they just
hide something.
Kept taking their clothes off. You see that with some of the people who have some sort of mental illness at that time and at this time. They just start destroying everything.
I had a buddy like that. Slightest sign of trouble and he'd rip his shirt off, ready to go. So she supported moral treatment, which was supposed to be provided and utilized by physicians. She continued her work to bring compassionate care into hospitals until her death on July 17th, 1887. So when you wrote moral treatment, is that just generally being morally good?
Yeah.
Okay. Not like a specific set of...
No, it's basically doctors should stand by the oath that they take.
Okay. Dorothy was one of the main reasons dedicated asylums were created for the mentally ill. She also fought to make sure the inmates, as they were called at the time, were treated better. This worked for a while when the city was overseeing the facilities, but conditions worsened when the states took over their management.
Generally, what it seems to be is a mass takeover in all of the United States was around 1935.
Okay. All right, so according to your notes, we're going to pivot to the buildings themselves, specifically the shape and structure of the asylum buildings. One would not think that the design would be a major focus for the treatment, but one person certainly did focus on that, and that was Dr. Thomas Kirkbride. He was born on July 31st, 1809, to a family of Quaker farmers in Pennsylvania. As he grew, his father recognized that Thomas was frail but smart, meaning he would not make a good farmer, but could be great at something else. Through his family connections, Thomas was able to attend medical school with the vision of becoming a surgeon.
Again, who you know?
Thomas applied to the Pennsylvania Hospital for his residency, but was denied. Instead, he was given a residency at the Quaker-run Friends Asylum for the Insane in Frankfort. That's quite a name. He did an outstanding job there and was deeply impressed by the moral treatment of the inmates. He had been under the impression that inmates would be chained naked to the walls in a dungeon-like facility. I think that's what a lot of us think even now. But instead, they were treated like humans, clothed, offered activities, and fed well. A year after starting at the asylum, he was offered a chance to finish his residency at his original hospital of choice. Thomas was elated because he would finally be able to live out his dream.
Well, being a surgeon, actually.
Yeah. He continued doing well at his job and received high praise from his patients for his compassion. He finished his residency and opened his own practice for a while, but when he was offered the position of superintendent at the new Pennsylvania Hospital for the Insane, he accepted it for the job stability.
It was new, but it was a extension from the Pennsylvania Hospital. So it was part of that campus.
Okay. The typical asylum building design that you recognize today was brought into existence by this guy. He envisioned long running hallways within buildings that were wide but short, like me. Although I'm pretty tall.
It's not meaning short by like the height. It's meaning short by like the
depth
width.
Of the length?
Like,
okay.
the depth.
Arranged in a shallow V shape. There would be yards for inmate activities, and he insisted on large open windows to let in fresh air and sunlight for the inmates to enjoy.
When you're envisioning this, envision a sanatorium.
Yeah,
like a TB
tuberculosis wing.
Yeah, that's exactly what this would look like.
Okay. Yeah, and we've seen like the proper people explore those, like when they were still standing and pretty much still intact the way it was supposed to be.
So instead of using later, when they started mass building insane asylums, they went away from this plan, but somehow sanatoriums got the plan and they're like, yeah, this is perfect.
Yeah, like us too.
Yeah.
So, yeah. The architecture was invented to better the lives of the inmates, even though the facilities later became kind of renowned for the harm that they did. Professor William J. Herdman, not able to find anything about his personal life other than he was accomplished in psychology. He is the one who conceptualized the mental health hospitals that we see today. He is the reason there were hospitals built exclusively for psychiatry alone, and he pushed for partial hospital stays and outpatient treatment programs. Interesting that we don't have background on this guy, or that it wasn't easy to find.
It wasn't easy. Like, I went through page after page after page for Google searches, and I could not find anything on this man.
He also brought forth the idea that addiction treatment should have its own dedicated facilities, which later was an influence for the Alcoholics Anonymous treatment movement. He also proposed that neurology and psychology should be separate fields of study, leading the way for two different departments to be established, first in hospitals and then in teaching. All right, insulin shock therapy. Yay. I don't think this one's as bad. All right, now that we have some information on the asylums, let's get into the treatments. The first treatment we are going to talk about is chemical shock therapy, but more specifically, insulin coma therapy, more commonly known as insulin shock therapy. Okay, Manfred Joshua Sakel, that might be right, was born on June 6, 1900 at Nádvorna in the Austro-Hungarian Empire, an area that we would now refer to as Ukraine. He went to school at the University of Vienna to study medicine, specializing in neurology and neuropsychiatry from 1919 to 1925. Manfred was working as an intern at the Lichterfelde Sanatorium in Berlin, treating a patient for morphine addiction when he accidentally gave the patient too much insulin. This caused prolonged convulsions, and the patient then went into a coma. After waking up, the patient had a clear mind and greatly reduced withdrawal symptoms. As with most discoveries, this was an accident. Manfred started experimenting on animals in his kitchen, as you do, natural progression, to see if the effects of an insulin coma could be reversed safely. Okay. He called the treatment Sakel's technique. He thought that insulin antagonized the neuronal effects of the products of the adrenal cortex, which he quoted will force the nerve cell to conserve functional energy and store it to be available for the reinforcement of the cell.
Basically to heal itself.
Yeah, rest and heal.
Rest and heal. Yep. Basically what we prescribe most people now.
Rest and heal. Sit down, shut the hell up, and heal. His findings were published in 1930 under the title New Treatment of Morphine Addiction. Manfred went back to the University of Vienna Neuropsychiatric Clinic in 1933, where he convinced his supervisors, though it was difficult at first because he sounded crazy, to allow him to induce all of his patients into insulin comas for 1 to 5 hours, 5 to 6 times a week. Sunday was always an off day. This continued until the patients experienced 50 to 60 comas, or until they were deemed to be of sound mind. Now, would you sleep in the evening? If you were in a coma for like 5 hours a day, would you want to or need to sleep at night?
Yes, because it's not restful sleep. It's not sleep like when you go to bed.
Okay.
You're forced into coma, but your brain is still actively functioning, which they have found out very recently that actually happens. Like you can hear sounds, you can
So just like trapped in there.
yeah, basically you are having a horrible nightmare the whole time. So you have no restful sleep.
Oh, okay. Well, that sucks. I was hoping maybe this was like Severance. They're like, okay, I'm going to go for my treatment. And then 5 hours passes. They don't really remember it.
Well, some people recently now remember being put into coma. Like they know time has passed and they know it's been a while.
But they don't know how long.
Yeah. But it's not anything that would be, anyone was looking forward to, because you're put into hyperglycemic coma, which means your blood sugar drops so low your brain can't even function anymore, which is super dangerous, and a bunch of people died. But you would have convulsions, which are very painful. It's seizures. It's just really bad seizures. And then you would feel awfully sick, and then you would go into a coma, and you come out, and you would feel really sick, and just like you were hit by a bus.
Like a hangover.
Yeah, a very, very bad one.
Okay. So it seemed that this worked. As
him.
70% of the patient population went into full remission. He stated that 18% of the patients were in social remission, meaning that they had little to no symptoms and were able to function in society, and 68% were discharged. Now, this is him reporting this, okay? Remember, he is the one that came up with the procedure because he overdosed somebody and didn't want to admit that he was in the wrong. Can we believe this actually worked? Who knows, as it is not used anymore, which might be saying something. And I got to remind you guys, I'm reading Kim's notes, and I haven't seen these before for the most part, except maybe glancing through them. So if my tone sounds funny, that I want to remind you that is why. His findings were published in 1933, followed by 13 more writings published between 1934 and 1935, where the discharge rate allegedly went up all the way to 88%. Apparently, the discharge rate at the clinic was only 20% back in 1931, so with this supposed success rate, psychiatrists from all over the world came to learn the ways of this crazy dude. Dedicated wards were established in mental hospitals all over the world, but mainly in England and Wales. Between 36 and 37, Manfred was forced to immigrate to the U.S., where he continued his work and defended its honor, not his honor.
Yeah, he was forced to migrate to the U.S. for political reasons. I couldn't really find any.
Probably war-related.
Most likely.
Like the Nazis were coming up around that time.
Yeah.
Things were going, I don't know, weird alliances. Probably assume it's World War II related.
Yeah, and what was Russia before?
Oh, it was Russia. It was just the Russian Empire. Or are you talking about the Soviets?
Soviets, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. They were taking over Ukraine.
Yeah. Russian Empire, Soviet Union, Russian Federation. Is that what they're called now?
I don't know.
We just call them Russia.
Yeah.
All right. We might have just made ourselves look very stupid. So he resumed his practice at the Harlem Valley State Hospital, which was the first facility to use insulin shock therapy in the United States. Eventually, there was a decline in the practice as electroshock therapy became more popular because it was cheaper. If Manfred wanted to continue performing the procedure, he would have to find a new place to practice, which he did, a hotel. This is where he earned the reputation of being arrogant and driven by greed. He was apparently either a workaholic or too crazy for men and women, because he stayed single until his death on December 2nd, 1957, at the age of 57. It's not a long time.
Yeah, and you thought experimenting on animals in his kitchen was bad.
Yeah.
Think of all the medical equipment he had to be dragging up the hotel and what they would be thinking.
Yeah, I'm thinking about, you've probably never seen Minority Report, have you? You haven't seen anything.
No.
Oh, you're so sheltered. There's a doctor that Tom Cruise goes to see who works out of like a hotel, and the conditions are horrifying.
This makes me think of the
Bates Hotel?
No, John
Holmes?
the Baby J skit.
Oh, John
Mulaney. Yeah, where he talks about he went to a doctor who was practicing out of his home.
Yeah.
Just to get prescriptions.
Yeah. The bit where John Mulaney's trying to get prescription drugs without really needing them.
And he's like, oh, I got another flu shot.
And he's like, really easy thing to do. Find the worst rated doctor in your area because they really need your business.
Yep. That's exactly what I thought of when I read that.
All right, yeah, come down to the Motel 6. I'll put you in a coma for a while, and I'm sure everything will be fine. Okay, so the next one we're going to talk about is the lobotomy. The next horrible psychiatric procedure we're going to talk about is the lobotomy, commonly understood to be driving an ice pick through the eye. Again, laughing because of the absurdity. Igaz Moniz was born on November 19th, 1874 in Avanca, Portugal. He was baptized under the name Antonio Caetano de Abreu Freire, but was renamed by his grandfather to Antonio Igaz Moniz.
That the Igaz Moniz was a very popular political person that his grandfather really liked.
Okay. So he attended medical school at the University of Coimbra,
I guess.
in Portugal.
I don't know.
Okay.
I can't pronounce this shit.
It's an odd name, yeah.
I just typed it.
Right. It's tough when you don't hear it out loud. You can't rely on like the AI thing on your phone or computer to read it out loud because a lot of the time it's wrong. Yeah, so he went to this school from 1891 to 1899, but moved to France to further his studies in neurology and psychology under renowned doctors in the field. In 1911, he returned to Portugal to head the new neurology department at the University of Lisbon, where he stayed until he retired in 1944. So peaceful career. Nothing bad from this guy. He worked as a psychiatric doctor, but he also had a career in politics, which he retired from in 1926. He had entered in 1903 as a deputy of the Portuguese Parliament. In 1917, he was promoted to Portuguese ambassador to Spain. And later that same year, he was appointed Minister of Foreign Affairs. In 1918, he served as president of the Portuguese delegation at the Paris Peace Conference. So, sounds like an overall good dude. Your words. I mean, not exactly your words, but your sentiment.
He was a doctor at this time. He went through med school, finished med school, and was like, I need more work. So, he got into politics as he's working as a doctor.
Yeah. You have a note here saying, sounds like an overall good guy, but anyone in politics is questionable at best. So after his retirement from politics, he solely focused on neurology. One of his areas of study involved trying to visualize the blood vessels in the brain to find the location of tumors. This is where he came up with the formula for contrast dye that is still used to this day, and it is used for thyroid scans, but not for anything else because of how toxic it is.
It's a very toxic formula.
So very effective for what? Showing up on MRIs?
Ultrasounds typically.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but it was used originally for x-rays. If you put it through, it shows up on x-rays.
With his imaging work done with this contrast dye, he moved his sights onto how to help mentally ill patients become successful in daily life. He read scientific papers detailing how chimpanzees became docile and successfully followed through on tasks that previously caused them to become enraged or uncooperative once both of their frontal lobes were removed. He then read a medical paper about a man with a large frontal tumor. This man was originally shy and introverted, but after undergoing a surgery that removed parts of the frontal lobe where the tumor was located, he became extroverted, lively, and self-centered.
Yep.
Not sure that last bit's great. Gus concluded that people who were mentally ill had a problem with abnormal connections in their frontal lobe. Leaping to conclusions was like this specialty back then.
Oh, yeah.
He believed that patients with oppressive and depressive disorders could be helped if the frontal lobe was surgically removed or excised. How this was done is the patient was wheeled into the OR and their head was shaved from the forehead to the top middle of the skull. Marks were made about 6 centimeters above the ear on both sides with a line connecting them that followed the coronal suture line as best as possible. Novocaine was injected along that line in the scalp, then the doctor would cut along the line and pull the skin forward. Once the skull was exposed, 3 holes were drilled into it.
The 2 above the ears and then 1 at the top of the head.
That's great. Yeah. At the marks above the ears and the top of the skull, then a leucoscope, a metal stick with a wire loop at the top, was inserted into the holes to scrape away the parts of the white matter where the nerves live in the frontal lobe.
So he didn't scrape away all of it. He just removed some of it.
Yeah. Just kind of like less is more?
Yeah.
No real plan?
Yep.
Okay. Finally, alcohol was injected to deaden the rest of the nerves. Now, patients were still awake during the procedure, but they were given a medication that numbed the nerves functioning as pain receptors, or they might actually be placed under general anesthesia. Patients seemed to get better from this, and he was awarded a Nobel Prize for the discovery.
Do you know the difference between local and general anesthesia?
Mm-hmm.
Well, some people probably don't.
General anesthesia, they knock your ass out.
Local anesthesia, they numb the area.
Right.
Yeah. Just figured we would talk about the difference in case people don't know.
So this procedure was done in Europe and didn't really make its way to America until two fateful doctors, Walter Freeman and James Watts, those are both good names, saw the procedure in the articles about the apes. They wanted to... Are we talking about chimps?
Yeah.
Are chimps apes?
No.
Be better. They wanted to introduce the procedure into the treatment of the mentally ill. Walter modified the procedure by removing more of the white matter, believing the surgery needed a more dramatic name. He called it the Prefrontal Lobotomy. There was pushback from physicians and the medical communities, but the media was all for these procedures. Now, there were some issues. First, it took too long. Second, it was too expensive. And third, Freeman was losing confidence that it worked exactly like he thought it did. So
granted, he did this wrong.
Yeah.
So you can't have the same.
That's true. Yeah. You're writing about that he did it differently. He's like, this doesn't work.
Yeah, but he's doing it wrong.
So he came up with the transorbital lobotomy and how this worked. Trigger warning for everybody. You've been warned. An ice pick was punched through the orbital bone, which is thinner than the rest of the surrounding skull, and a 45-degree angle was made with the ice pick to sever the fibers connecting the nerves between the thalamus and the frontal lobe.
So basically the 45-degree angle was sideways. Mm-hmm. So they would go towards the center of the brain.
Yeah, to scramble it. During this procedure, patients were rendered unconscious using electroshock. It seems Walter really did want to help the patient, but his procedure was found to be unsafe, with a high mortality rate and terrible execution. It lost its popularity in the medical community in the mid-1950s, only after more than 20,000 of the procedures had been performed, starting in the 40s.
Yeah, so if you didn't die, you were basically a shell.
Yeah.
Like, there was nothing going on up there.
Yeah, you see it in, like, horror movies, or in The Terminal, there's a scene towards the very end where it happens to somebody. Shutter Island is another movie that has this. It's like a looming threat. Like, they know, Leo DiCaprio's character is in there for some reason, but how do I put it without spoiling a 16-year-old movie? It's known that if this happens to you, you're gone. Mm-hmm. Like, you will not be the person you were anymore.
No. And that's, like, if you have some damage to the frontal lobe, your personality changes. Mm-hmm. If you have all the damage to the frontal lobe, you're not a person anymore.
Yeah.
But with them doing the 45 so far into the frontal lobe, you're not just messing up the frontal lobe nerves, you're messing up basically all the nerves in the brain, because there's your spinal cord goes up, and then you get this little kind of like kidney bean shape in your brain where all the nerves kind of come together. Mm-hmm. And that's what they're trying to disrupt.
Yeah, I don't know. It's more terrifying. It depends on, like, your belief of where consciousness comes from. But I don't know if it's scarier to think that, like, it just destroys who you are because it destroys that brain chemistry and those connections, or if you believe that consciousness kind of comes from somewhere else, that you might just be trapped in this, like, automaton body that's just kind of going about its business, and you maybe don't have any control over it. Like, there's still, like, kind of some of you in there, but you just can't really talk or act out anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was used as a threat big time.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't behave, you're going to get a lobotomy.
All right, so we're going to lighten it up now with electroconvulsive therapy. So we mentioned this earlier.
Pun intended.
This was invented by Ugo Cerletti.
Cerletti, yep.
Or Cerletti. And Lucio Bini.
Yeah, Lucio Bini really was just the person who, like, developed the equipment for it.
Okay.
He wasn't really the person who did the procedure. He just made the equipment.
Okay. Yeah, and it looks like he was younger. You have here that he was born on September 18th, 1908. And Cerletti was born on September 16th, 1877 in Conegliano, in Veneto, Italy. His younger years are not touched upon in the sources that you used. His recorded history begins with his studies. Hugo studied medicine in Rome and Turin, two cities that are about a 7-hour car ride away from each other, I guess, in modern day. During his early medical school years, his focus was on histology and histopathology.
Do you know what that is?
No.
Did I put it in there?
Which involves studying cells, tissues, and the diseases that affect those structures.
Yep.
Usually using a microscope.
Histo, cell, patho, disease.
Yeah. I mean, you can tell by the way I stumbled through those words. I'm not familiar with them. Because of his focus on cells and tissues, he discovered that nerve tissues have their own unique reactions to stimuli, a finding that helped make neuropathology its own distinct field of study. The unfortunate part of this story is that Hugo is not actually considered the father of neuropathology. That belongs to Joseph Godwin Greenfield.
Isn't that fucked up? He found it, and he's not the father for it.
Yeah. I mean,
if that was me,
I didn't do the research on this, so I don't know. Maybe this is like when you say the joke and then somebody else says the joke louder and everybody laughs and they get the credit.
Basically, because he got credit for the ECT.
Yeah. So while in school, he studied under several renowned neurologists and psychiatrists, Pierre Marie and Dupré in Paris, Emile Kraepelin, who is considered the father of modern scientific psychiatry, and Alois Alzheimer, who discovered the disease, then known as senile dementia, but you can't guess what it's called now, in Munich, Germany, and Franz Nissl in Heidelberg, Germany. Is this the end of the me mangling name section? The prestigious education is likely where he found the inspiration to study psychology and neurology. After graduating, he held several impressive positions. He was appointed head of the Neurobiological Institute at the Mental Institute of Milan from 1919 to 1924. He held a lecturing post in neuropsychiatry in Bari from 1924 to 1928. He took over as a professor at the University of Genoa from 1928 to 1935, and he eventually became the chair of the Department of Mental and Neurological Diseases at the University of Rome, La Sapienza. At the University of Rome, La Sapienza. Now for a brief disclaimer. Oh, God. For this next section, I will essentially be stating facts from Rick Rowan's article, A Brief History of Bioelectrical Medicine and Other Interesting Facts. Okay.
Yeah, I basically took everything because he did it so well that is one of my sources, and all of my sources will be in the
show notes.
Yeah.
Okay. So the use of electricity in medicine seems to have started around 2750 to 2500 BC. There are stone carvings depicting the use of electric fish as a treatment for pain. The fish, which was actually a ray called the torpedo or the thunderer of the Nile, produced a strong electric shock. So is this a creature that emitted an electric shock and they were using that?
Yep.
Okay. When placed over a painful area, the shock would numb that region and seem to treat the injury. This method of pain management was used by the Greeks and Egyptians and later adopted by the Romans. This primitive use of electricity remained pretty much unchanged until the 1600s when an English physician looked into using these shocks for medicinal purposes. This primitive use of electricity remained pretty much unchanged until the 1600s when an English physician looked into using electrical shocks in medicine. Although his research did not really go anywhere. In the 1700s, man-made electricity was produced and doctors became excited about that, according to the article. In 1745, a German physician named Kratzenstein taught others how to use an electrostatic machine to treat localized pain. By 1752, Benjamin Franklin was using an electrostatic machine to treat pain in paralyzed and hysterical patients. In 1780, an Italian anatomy professor named Galvani, that's a clean name, tested the use of electricity on muscle movement. By 1800, another Italian, Carlo Mettiucci, discovered that electrical currents were naturally produced by injured tissues. In the 1920s, alternating current electricity was being used worldwide to stimulate muscle recovery by turning on specific neurons within the muscle while turning off the neurons responsible for pain, a process known as sinusoidal stimulation. Did I get that right?
Yes.
In 1840, England began using galvanic current, a low-level constant direct current, and established the very first electrical therapy department. Oh, that's another good band name. From 1860 onward, England utilized faradic stimulation using interrupted direct currents to stimulate motor nerves and cause muscle contractions, leading to the creation of the Bristow coil. That sounds like the stuff that I had after my knee surgery.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right.
Probes on. Okay.
Yep.
In 1885, France brought back the use of electric fish.
The fish is back.
A true redemption story for the fish. Then in 1891, French psychiatrist named D'Arsonval discovered high-frequency currents and how to apply them in medicine. He found that frequencies greater than 10 kilohertz produced no sensation, while frequencies below that caused muscle contractions. We have to assume that a 10 kilohertz signal caused both muscle contractions and sensation. These currents were used to modify physiological processes, causing changes in breathing, the dilation of blood vessels, and the blood pressure adjustments. In 1891, Nikola Tesla created prototypes for long-wave, short-wave, and microwave diathermy.
I have no idea how to pronounce that, so I don't know.
Devices for deep tissue heating, utilizing his advanced understanding of high-frequency electricity. There's some really cool pictures that you've probably seen of him sitting around like Tesla coils that produce high-frequency electricity. Yeah, there's like lightning around him and like these
I have seen those,
balls of energy. And he's just chilling.
Yep.
It's because, high-frequency electricity like that will flow over your body instead of through it. So it's generally not dangerous. But this is not advice. I'm not legally responsible for you. Do not play with electricity at all. But that was apparently the explanation. Like, the way he was generating it was so high frequency, it wasn't dangerous for him. I don't know. Where are we at? Not electric fish. Okay. The following year, in 1892, the Thomas Edison Lab in the U.S. produced electrical devices designed to decrease pain in localized areas, numbing them and basically acting as an anesthetic. From the 1900s onward, the discoveries of Galvani, Faraday, and Tesla were adopted worldwide for therapeutic purposes. Galvanic, sinusoidal, and faradic currents became the standard for stimulation. In 1908, a German doctor named von Berndt wrote a paper on treating joint disease using high-frequency wave currents. Starting in 1914, injuries from the First World War were commonly treated with therapeutic electrostimulation. In the 20s, faradic, sinusoidal, galvanic, and all that switched galvanic currents and were combined into switch
boards.
Yeah, so switch tables for medical use, and shortwave diathermy devices were widely produced.
So they would basically have them all in like
they were
a
like settings
board?
on a single machine?
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Maybe I read that poorly. In the 1930s, interferential currents were developed in Germany. This involved crossing two alternating medium-frequency sine wave current paths, because we all know what that means.
Yep.
To produce a pulsed low-frequency mode of electrostimulation. Finally, in 1938, electroshock therapy was created specifically to treat schizophrenia. We cannot fully discuss ECT or understand why Hugo and Lucio were searching for new ways to induce seizures without mentioning Ladislas Meduna, a Hungarian psychiatrist. Meduna discovered a connection between glial cells, also known as neuroglia, both schizophrenia and epilepsy. Glial cells are support cells that surround neurons, if your understanding is correct. They help insulate the area, clean the space between neurons, form a protective tissue called a myelin, and improve the connection for electrical pulses to travel from one neuron to another. Having too many or too few of these cells can impact how the nerves work, which researchers believe could lead to either epilepsy or schizophrenia. In a normal person, there should be a 1-to-1 ratio of glial cells to neurons, totaling roughly 85 billion of each. Like most cells in the body, glial cells should be able to replace old or damaged cells to keep their numbers close to where they need to be. However, a person can be born with an imbalance or develop one over time. In the early 1930s, Meduna found this correlation when he dissected two brains, one from a patient with schizophrenia and one from a patient with epilepsy. He observed that the schizophrenic brain had too few glial cells, causing an interruption in the connection between neurons. Conversely, the epileptic brain had too many glial cells, which basically caused the neurons to become overactive. This overactivity releases toxins that degrade the neural tissues through inflammation and cause the neurons to fire excessively, a detail that was discovered later on. Now, you admit here that your interpretation could be wrong as you're not a neurologist. So
I am not, and I do not work in a neurology office.
So you're saying don't take your word as fact, but that this seems to be the general understanding.
Yep.
Okay. Based on this connection, Meduna theorized that causing epileptic seizures in his patients with schizophrenia could cure the disease, following the logic that opposite conditions cure opposite conditions. What?
So you take it like they found in like TB, lung cancer. TB can treat lung cancer can treat TB, but you're still left with a terrible.
I get it. It's just the way you phrased it was so strange. I understand. Like, yeah.
Opposite treats opposite.
Right. Yeah.
So if a patient with schizophrenia has too few, they want to create seizures so that way they get more glial cells.
Right.
Like in an epileptic.
Right. Yeah. I get it. This is how convulsive therapies were born. In 1935, Meduna began using chemical therapy, typically injecting chemicals like metrazole or cortisol to induce seizures and attempt to cure schizophrenia. This treatment was also frequently combined with insulin shock therapy, as doctors believed using both treatments gave the patient a better chance of healing. Because the drug-induced convulsions were quite violent and often caused patients to break bones, typically their spines, a drug called curare was administered. Curare is natural. You have it here. Curare is a plant-derived muscle relaxant that also puts the patient into a dreamlike state. If a patient was in an insulin coma, the process would be quite involved. They would begin with a small shot of glucose to start bringing them out of their deep sleep. Once the patient was able to move in response to a reflex touch, such as brushing the bottoms of their feet, they would be given a shot of curare, followed immediately by an intravenous shot of the convulsive chemical. After the patient finished having the convulsions, they would be given more glucose, usually in a drink, to wake them up further. Returning to Hugo and Lucio, because of course we are. In 1934, an article titled Experimental Research on Epilepsy Using the Veal Method?
Yeah.
That doesn't sound right. Veal?
I believe it's veal.
Vial?
Something like that.
It's Viale. The Viale method was published by Chiaotzi. I
don't know.
What is that?
It's a name.
Chiauzzi. Chiaozzi.
This is in Italy. I don't know.
It sounds like Chaozu. I feel like I'm saying Chaozu. But instead of a scary little Chinese vampire creature from Dragon Ball, this guy is an Italian scientist, an assistant to Hugo, detailing the very study of electrical currents that we've been talking about in dogs. Wow.
Yeah, our poor Curly. He
Lovely.
Could have been an experiment.
Curly, if we gave you ECT, would you be less weird?
No.
I just saw the word. Okay. The V method that I can't pronounce involved passing electrical currents to the body to induce epileptic seizures by placing an electrode in the animal's mouth and another in its rectum. Hugo was trying to perfect this treatment, hoping it would be a better convulsive therapy because it was less expensive and could potentially produce less violent seizures. I couldn't imagine anything more violent than me having an electric probe put up my butt. I would. We're all dying.
You'd come out of it and you'd be raging.
Horrifying. During these experiments, they discovered that electricity passing through the upper body would invariably hit the heart, causing a fatal heart attack. Even when they used the lowest possible voltage for the shortest amount of time, it still interfered with the heart, so they halted experiments briefly until they could gain a better number of dogs to kill. Better understanding of electricity in the brain. You horrifying monsters who killed dogs by putting electrodes up their butts. What a way to earn your spot in hell.
Yeah.
Like, you go up to the pearly gates if that's what happens. You know, they look at your book, your life stats. They're like, oh, you killed 55 dogs by putting an electrode up their butt. Like, that's new. I didn't know there was a column for this in this book, but here it is. So downstairs you go.
Yep.
Somehow Hugo learned that a local pig butcher was using electrical shocks applied to either the side of a pig's temples to knock the animal out before slaughter.
I believe my
I read that in a
actual
weird tone.
I believe my actual words for that was to give them a little night time before they take the ultimate sleep.
Okay. Yeah, I read that in a weird way. Okay. Hugo went to observe this procedure, like that they call it a procedure, and realized that the resulting seizures were exactly what this team had been looking for. So they just want to give him a little zappy zap on the side of the head. And he's like, I want to stick it up their butt.
Yeah.
I think this is the way.
Yep.
I'm going to stick it in the butt. Fuck. Okay. They resumed experimenting on animals until they were comfortable with the results by applying the shock to the temples. No electricity reached the heart, and the animals woke up safely. They successfully determined the precise tolerance levels, the onset time of the seizures, and the mortality rates for different voltages and durations, ensuring there is no brain injury. Hard to tell what an animal's cognitive ability is, I would think.
Well, they would see if the dog died, because generally it could potentially cause like a heart attack, or the seizures could cause them to die. And if that happened, they would exhume the brain and take a look at it.
Exhume.
Remove.
Okay. Excise.
Yep.
Dissect.
Whichever you want to call it.
Well, exhume would be taking out of a grave, I think.
I don't know.
That might not be the right word. I could be wrong.
I mean, it is technically a grave.
No. Not if they didn't bury the dog. It's not a grave.
Well, it's a grave for the
I
brain.
doubt they buried the dogs. I doubt they did anything good for these dogs. They didn't even give them White Castles or anything before they did this, or even lowered them. Like, even Crystal Burgers, like the minimum you could do.
McDonald's is the minimum you can do.
They just determined the tolerance levels and all that stuff, like we're talking about. Lucio was the one who provided the exact regulations for the intensity and flow time of the electrical current. With the results finally matching their goals, they decided it was time to test the procedure on a human patient. In April of 1938, police found a schizophrenic man wandering the streets of Rome and brought him to the clinic for mental and nervous diseases. And the doctor said, "It must be my birthday." The patient was observed for about 3 weeks. Staff noted that he spoke in his own made-up jargon, suffered from illusions, had disorganized thoughts, and was completely emotionless. Apart from that last one, sounds kind of like me. A lot of people I know. They described his existence as being like a tree that does not bear fruit. After these 3 weeks, Lucio and Hugo decided it was time to try their newly developed treatment. The patient was prepped for the procedure, his head was shaved, and he was laid face up on a bed. He was given a mouth guard made from a copper tube covered with a compress, and large electrodes were placed on the frontoparietal regions of his skull, his temples. No anesthesia was used because they believed the patient would not feel the electrical shock. What say you?
Based on earlier findings, no.
Okay.
They believed that it wouldn't be if the Hertz was up, but...
Okay, they're not just like, animals don't feel pain, crazy people don't feel pain. They're like, they shouldn't feel it because of the frequency of the electricity?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
At least they're not just...
Yeah, they shouldn't be able to feel it, but you would feel like something.
Yeah. At least they had some reason to think maybe it's okay.
Yeah, and typically they would have like a burn after, like a little burn mark after.
Yeah. Okay. The first shock was delivered at 80 volts for 1/10 of a second, which resulted in a strong muscle contraction and tonic spasms, cramps that caused severe muscle stiffening. The second shock was delivered the very next minute at 90 volts for 1/10 of a second. The patient experienced spasms similar to the first shock, but they lasted longer. Notably, he did not lose consciousness and did not remember the procedure. So I guess at least there's that. According to Hugo, the patient turned pale for a few seconds, relaxed with a deep breath, and then after about a minute, opened his eyes, sat up, and started singing a popular dirty song. They zapped this guy in the head twice, and he jumped up and went,
Oh, skeet,
Oh,
mother.
I was trying to decide on one. You beat me. I was going to go from the window to the wall. The third and final shock was delivered at 110 volts for 0.2 of a second, which caused an atonic spasm without relaxation, followed by rhythmic spasms and a full seizure. The patient also experienced bodily pallor, turning entirely pale and then blue up until the 48th second. After repeating this exact procedure 14 more times over the course of 2 months, the patient supposedly went into full remission from schizophrenia, according to Hugo's assistant, Ferdinando. Hugo continued treating patients at the clinic he headed and announced these highly positive results a few months later. He claimed that 80% of his patients went into full remission, while the remaining 20% showed significant improvement. These increased remission rates were successfully replicated at other clinics. The numbers weren't quite as high as Hugo's initial claims, but they were still much better than anything seen prior to this treatment. Nowadays, it is theorized that electricity basically woke up the glial cells, prompting them to do their jobs and start reproducing, which is likely why the treatment did show some results. I just still like the fact that he woke up and they zapped him and he started singing some dirty song. And I wonder what a dirty song was like back then.
Oh, it was something not that bad.
Right. I went down the street and saw a dame or something.
Yeah.
And her tight shirt suggested a plump bosom or whatever. I don't know. I'm mixing where we are. I don't even remember what country we're supposed to be in for this. Oh, Rome.
Italy.
Rome.
Yeah.
So she got the nicer bosom. Okay. Where are we? 1940. ECT was formally introduced to the world as a standard treatment for schizophrenia, with the recommended procedure set at 110 volts for 0.2 of a second. Oh, here we go. American psychiatrists adapted the procedure slightly, using between 70 and 150 volts for anywhere from 0.1 to 1 full second. Initially, there were no anesthetics or muscle relaxants used. The procedure was performed utilizing only physical restraints and a bite block.
Kind of fucked up.
On today's episode, how fucked up.
That's fucked up.
So is this the end?
That's the end.
Okay.
Of the
this
first episode.
Establishing the lore of your show.
Yeah. This is basically all the information I wish I knew when I was listening to these podcasts.
Yeah, I didn't know almost any of this.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was ever effective. I thought it was like pseudoscience. I didn't think that there was any real world application. I thought it was like leeches, where it's like they just thought it worked, or maybe it did accidentally in some circumstances, so they continued to do it.
Yeah, and it's still used today. I mean, it was highly researched throughout the years, and it's still used today. They're put under general anesthetic and given muscle relaxants and everything, but it's still used.
But this is what you talked about when you said when a lot of this stuff was brought to the U.S., they did it wrong. They tried to do it cheaply. They tried to do it quickly. We saw it with the lobotomies, and we saw it with
Almshouses. And
yeah, I was gonna say
ECTs.
We saw it with the chemical lobotomy. Or no, sorry, we saw it with the insulin shock therapy.
Yeah,
but insulin shock therapy seemed to be somewhat effective, but went away because electroshock therapy was cheaper. But they didn't do electroshock therapy correctly in the U.S.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. All of the
and then
people,
the lobotomy was also not done correctly. Like they were supposed to be
taking
anesthetized,
a little bit,
taking a little bit of the white matter.
So you have the covering of the brain, and which is the myelin.
Yeah.
If my understanding is correct, and then you have a thick, almost kind of like skin. And then you have the white matter inside of the brain. When you hear these shows, like cop shows or whatever, and they're like, there's white matter all over the place, that's what they're talking about.
Okay. Horrible. Okay.
Yeah, and then it's also like with media and stuff, we just watched Young Sherlock, and it was supposed to take place in 1880, and they used ECTs. And as we have just found out, it wasn't brought to the rest of the world until 1940.
Yeah. And it's also an example of like the dread that they bring about by using a psychiatric institute. Like Sherlock's mother's committed and it seems nice.
Yeah.
Like, not nice that she was committed, but the facility seems nice. Mycroft goes, and they're like, oh, Mr. Holmes, we've moved your mother to a bigger room and all this stuff. And she's able to paint and all this, but you find out later on that they were doing some
Horrible
corrupt
shit.
stuff behind the scenes.
Yeah. But generally, around this time, when insane asylums were a big thing across the whole world, they really didn't want family visiting because of what took place in them.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And what little family did visit, they were out. From my understanding, they were forced outside, so that way they didn't see anything going on inside.
Yeah, or like in Guillermo del Toro's Wolfman, Benicio del Toro plays the one who becomes a werewolf, who's Anthony Hopkins' son. And they have like a few lines of explanation as to why he does not have, like why he has an American accent, that he was sent away to America to live with family or something after his mother died, and his dad sends him to an asylum where they do all this stuff to him. I don't think they do. Maybe they do Electroshock. Can't remember. I haven't seen that movie in a while, but they do this like ice immersion thing.
Hydrotherapy.
Yeah, there are these scenes where they have him strapped to a chair on some kind of mechanism that they like crank, and it puts him underwater for a while, under this ice water.
Mm-hmm.
And then they pull him back up.
Yeah, that's something that I didn't research. Generally because it wasn't used as a treatment in insane asylums. It was used as torture.
Why would an asylum want to torture the patients?
Because overcrowding and understaffing. So they wanted them to shut up somehow.
So they just did it for grins, like,
you were bad, let's go. How we put our child in timeout, they used hydrotherapy.
Okay. We say sit on the chair for 5 minutes.
And they say off to the ice bath you go.
Okay.
Yeah, and generally, when it first started, it was towels dunked in ice water or hot water and then wrapped around the patient.
Okay.
It transformed into, now you get into the bathtub and I'm going to leave you in there for like 3 to 6 hours. Unintended. And you're just going to sit there in either hot water or cold water with ice in it. It was first brought because they thought it could shock the system into functioning again. It's still used today. Like if you work out real hard, you take an ice bath because it's supposed to help your muscles.
Yeah.
I don't know if it does anything or not, but it's still used.
Old-timey doctors were like mechanics. They wanted to like whack stuff and see if it would start working again.
Whack. Fuck.
Yeah, or like hit the TV, like smack the TV. It'll be fun. Maybe it'll start working again.
Yeah. Yeah, they just did everything they could to try to find something that worked, and most of it was fucked up.
Yeah. Okay, so is that it for this one? This is kind of establishing the background for what we're going to get into in the next one?
Yep. Later, these next few episodes are going to be about the worst of the worst for the asylums. And then episodes after that would be kind of the ones that tried their best at being good.
Okay.
I don't want it to be all dark.
This wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be.
It's pretty fucked up. And then I did find videos on the procedures. I didn't find the ice pick lobotomy, and I really don't want to watch it.
Yeah.
But I did find videos about it, so the insulin shock and the convulsion therapy isn't bad. I only watched part of the lobotomy one, which was the prefrontal, the one with the 3 holes. Until I realized it was an actual human being. So I almost broke my screen trying to shut my laptop.
Aren't there not nerve endings in the brain?
You don't feel pain. There's nerve endings, but you don't feel pain.
Yeah.
There's no pain nerves.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why now if you get brain surgery, they wake you up. Make sure they don't hit something vital.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I feel a little queasy. We done?
Yep.
All right. Join us next time if you dare for more questionable treatments.
Or if you're weird like me and you find this interesting.
Yeah. Okay, bye.
Goodbye.